Battle of Sedgemoor was fought on the 6th of July 1685 on some fields not far from the village. There's a monument there today that actually shows roughly where the battle was. The battle was between James, Duke of Monmouth, the illegitimate son of Charles II. He lived in exile in Holland. He was a favourite of Charles II, and he always had the impression that he would be made king because he was a Protestant, Charles II was a Protestant, and his brother, James II, was a Roman Catholic. Because of the situation, James II died, but asked that his brother, James, Duke of York, should be made King James II. This caused a lot of stir and upset within some parts of the England, particularly, because they did not want to have another Roman Catholic king. So James, Duke of Monmouth, with some few troops, a chap called Argyle, Lord Argyle, and his friend Lord Grey, decided they would try and mount a rebellion against the James II. So they managed to raise money by pawning a lot of his girlfriend's jewellery, and pawned all his girlfriend's jewellery so that he'd have enough money to actually go to get here. And he bought a boat. He came with 80 men, roughly 80 men, and a little bit of artillery, some cannons. And he landed in Lyme Regis. And one of the reasons why he landed in Lyme Regis was parts of the West Country were particularly supportive on the Protestant religion, and they were willing to fight for their beliefs. So he landed on the 11th of June, 1685 at Lyme Regis. And while he was in Lyme, he gathered a few more troops and had almost like a sort of collection where people came from all round Dorset and South Devon to join him. One particular village called Collerton, which is near Seaton, which is the end of the tram lines at Seaton, 106 men joined the Duke of Monmouth. One of the highest amount of men from one village came and joined the Duke of Monmouth.
Would these have been trained soldiers or part of the local militia?
None of them were trained soldiers. Most of them were cloth makers, wool farmers, tradesmen like carpenters and people like that. And they were mostly young men who felt that they should stand up for their rights. So he had a bit of a battle with the Duke of Marlborough, which was a Churchill, John Churchill, and in Bridgeport on the 14th of June, so not long afterwards. And one of his main men, a Colonel Ventnor, was stabbed in the stomach, so he was lost to the cause. So his main man was a chap called Grey, who was going to support him, plus with a few more generals that they'd got together. Lord Argyle, his other friend, who was quite interested, thought he'd do a pincer movement and go to Scotland and raise an army in Scotland so that he could join the Duke of Monmouth when he got to London. So he went off up to Scotland, and the Duke of Monmouth stayed in Somerset. He gradually made his way forth to Chard, where he was proclaimed king by the local people, and then he was crowned king in Taunton. So he then decided that he felt that his aim was to get to Bristol and have a battle in Bristol. So he decided, because there were some very wealthy tradespeople in Bristol and Axbridge and places like that were very wealthy wool men. So they travelled all the way up towards Keynsham, where they had a little bit of a battle and actually won this battle. But then the army that the king had started began to get bigger and bigger, and gradually pushed Duke of Monmouth back towards Bridgewater.
I believe then that obviously the Monmouth troops were defeated. Was that about the end of it for Monmouth? Did he turn tail and go back into exile?
No, Monmouth, when he saw it was a lost cause, he escaped over the Polden Hills. So he got his horse and went over the Polden Hills, because if you know the area, there's the Polden Hills, and he rode off over the Polden Hills, and he headed towards Dorset, hoping that he could get a boat back to Europe, to France or Holland. So what he did was that he got as far as Dorset, and of course the troops were everywhere looking for people for the rebellion that were involved in the rebellion, and he managed to get a shepherd to swap clothes with him. But he was found in a ditch in Dorset, and he was taken to London, where he met on the 15th of July. His head was chopped off.